I have a message for those who keep telling other people's candidates to drop out of the presidential election. Let's talk about it. So I actually tried to live stream this segment, but as most people who follow this channel know, Comcast and YouTube don't like us all that much, but it's cool. I still felt it was important to get this message out nonetheless, which is that if you are telling other people's presidential candidates to drop out of the race, if you're demanding that supporters request that their candidates drop out of the race for no other reason other than a selfish desire to see your candidate win, well, you need to stop that. I don't know how else to say it. What you are doing is inherently anti-democratic. It is. You know, obviously, I've been in the game for a while, and I have my candidates that I like, and I have my candidates that I really, really, really do not like. I don't like them. However, one thing you have never heard me say, whether it be Bernie or Tulsi or Yang or a Buttigieg or a Kamala or a Cory Booker, one thing you have never heard me say is that you better drop out. You need to drop out. Even if it would serve my own goals, like as a supporter of a particular candidate. Never said that. And that's because I am, I guess, what you would call a democracy absolutist. In other words, I always believe that more democracy is 100% always better than less democracy. Always. In other words, the more people participate in democracy, the better outcomes we will have. I don't think that people really understand this because they're so fixated on instant gratification and getting what they want rather than asking, okay, what's best for the country? I also think that a part of the reason why I'm personally just such a democracy absolutist is because, well, one, I think that it shouldn't go without, I think it should go without being said, I'm a black man. So a lot of my perspective is crafted through that experiential lens. I also know my history. I know that as a black man, I wasn't even allowed to participate in politics in any capacity until after the Civil War was over. That includes running for office. That includes voting, right? And even after that, when we were finally allowed to, we were terrorized. You know, it was back then it was drop out or die. Drop out or be lynched. Now you fast forward, you can look at the women's suffrage movement. I believe it was around 1920 that women were finally allowed to vote and run for office. Here's a problem with that though. Even then, black women couldn't vote. The women's suffrage movement was primarily for white women, but the only reason that people were okay, that Congress people unfortunately, were okay with ratifying, I believe it was the 19th Amendment, was as long as you maintain the white supremacy aspect of voting, making sure black women and other women of color could not influence the election in any significant way. So our history, unfortunately for us, is full of democratic suppression. However, it is also, just stained with the blood of people who are willing to fight and die for democracy. It needs to be understood that if you give an inch, eventually you will start to take a mile. And you even begin to sound like the people that you've despised in the past for treating you the same way. Even if you believe your goals are altruistic, even if you think that you're doing what's best for the good of society. A lot of the times, you're only thinking through, or you're only seeing the election or a candidate, their strengths or their weaknesses, or the potential benefits. You're only looking at it through your lens and your experiences and what you're being told and what you've convinced yourself of. And that's for everybody. For example, how many people told How many Hillary supporters in 2016 told Bernie Sanders to drop out? And mind you, this was prior to us really understanding just how bad Hillary Clinton was. Like, the left had a general like lack of enthusiasm regarding Hillary Clinton, but it was a different level by the end of the election. So I'm talking about when it was just a general lack of enthusiasm. Their supporters were telling us to drop out, or them telling us and telling Bernie Sanders to drop out of the race so that we can all coalesce around Hillary Clinton. Now, eventually, Bernie Sanders did endorse Hillary Clinton. Eventually. But Bernie Sanders, even though the odds were against him, and even though the entire Democratic establishment was demanding he drop out, Bernie Sanders exposed a lot of veins, a lot of veins in the Democratic Party. Exposed them. We found out just how bad election rigging is, not only at a state level, but on a national level. We found out just how much the DNC puts their thumb on the scale. Because of Bernie Sanders' willingness to stay in the race, we discovered people like Tulsi Gabbard and Nina Turner. Because of Bernie Sanders staying in the race, a whole new wave of independent journalism came about, largely based around his candidacy, admittedly so. But that is what branched off even into other important movements like the one for Julian Assange. Although Bernie himself has not come out and supported Julian Assange, the people who support a lot of the principles that Bernie stands for do support Julian Assange and give him ample coverage because of it. So because Bernie Sanders refused his democratic, or refused to allow his democratic right to run for president to be infringed upon, a lot came from that. Now, of course, we know that he's the most popular candidate in the country, potentially the most popular candidate in history. But if he would have given up when they told him to, if he would have dropped out when neoliberals told him to, even before we knew exactly what Hillary Clinton was, things would look a lot different now, wouldn't it? But if you're only thinking through the lens of instant gratification, we have to beat the Republicans, that's a whole, you end up with a whole different result. Let's fast forward. I know there are, obviously, y'all know how I feel about Elizabeth Warren. I don't like Elizabeth Warren. Everybody knows this. Not once have you ever heard me tell her to drop out, though. I know a lot of people are saying she should drop out and endorse Bernie. She should drop out, and if you want a woman, you should have Tulsi, and I agree with that, but I don't think she should drop out for that to happen. I believe that Tulsi and Bernie have to earn every single vote. Yang has to earn every single vote. It's a little bit more of a difficult battle for both of them, for all three of them, I should say, because of their outsider status, but they have to earn every single vote. They want Warren's voters. They got to take them. Not every vote you're going to be able to take. And to assume that Warren's voters would automatically go to Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang would be nonsensical. People are not monolithic in that regard. But guess what happened? Because Elizabeth Warren exercised her democratic right to run for office and is refusing to drop out, at least until she chooses to, guess what took place? Before, people were under the assumption that Elizabeth Warren was a progressive. People were under the assumption that she was actually ideologically close to Bernie Sanders. Although not quite there, people still believed that she was still a progressive. Then she exposed herself. How did she expose herself? Well, she joined the race. She didn't drop out. She kept talking. She talked and talked and talked. And if she would have dropped out 3 months in, 4 months in, when a lot of Bernie supporters, and even some Tulsi supporters, I'd imagine, when they were asking her to drop out and endorse Bernie, drop out and endorse Bernie, guess what? If she would have dropped out, stop participating in democracy, if you will, and endorse Bernie Sanders, people will actually think that Elizabeth Warren isn't a backstabbing snake of a politician. Although all the facts were there, Democratic engagement has resulted in us knowing that Elizabeth Warren has no chance in hell ever again to be the president of the United States of America, no matter what she does from here on out. because democracy was allowed to take place. I know a lot of people think of democracy as a zero-sum game. It is not, ladies and gentlemen. It is not. When you actually look at the results of democracy, you begin to realize that not every victory is codified by winning and losing, winning a particular office that election year and losing that race. That's not what democracy is. I give you another example. Jill Stein, obviously, what were they all? She needs to drop out. She's going to get Trump elected when there was literally nothing that would have, there's nothing supporting that. But guess what? Because Jill Stein participated in democracy and encouraged others to do so as well, she lost, obviously, but her loss was really suspicious. So she decided to open up lawsuits across the country to figure out exactly what was going on. And she learned that Democrats and Republicans were cheating in the general election. And because a lot of voting machines couldn't be reconciled in states like Pennsylvania, her lawsuit resulted in mandatory, hand-counted paper ballots. That was what the pursuit of democracy did. That was what Jill Stein staying in the race did. No, is she the president of the United States? No. But her contributions are immeasurable now because she stayed in the race. These are the reasons that I am a democracy absolutist. You will never hear me tell anyone to drop out of the race. I'll say expose yourself. I'll say that all day. Not to mention, people, if you're one of the ones telling Tulsi Gabbard to drop out, then that's just bad strategy. Because for some reason, I think that people have this assumption that if Tulsi drops out, that she would endorse Bernie Sanders. That's not a guarantee. It's not. Not saying that she wouldn't, but it's not a guarantee. They also believe somehow that her 6 or 7% in New Hampshire, 6% or 7% in maybe Wyoming or Wisconsin, whatever state it was, that somehow just goes to Bernie Sanders. No, that's not how it goes. Voters are not a monolith, bro. And even just because Tulsi drops out and decides to endorse Bernie doesn't mean her voters are gonna go to Bernie. To be quite honest with you, I don't care if it's Bernie dropping out to endorse Tulsi or Tulsi dropping out to endorse Bernie. Their endorsements are kind of meaningless without delegates attached to them. The establishment even understands this, which is why they haven't demanded people like Warren, Bloomberg, Deval Patrick even. That's why they haven't asked them to drop out and just get behind Biden. Because they know, Amy Klobuchar too, they know that without the delegates, their endorsements are meaningless because there will be delegates traded. So even strategically, even if you don't want, you don't believe in democratic absolutism like I do, even strategically, bro, it's not smart. But morally, it is not right for you to do that, especially before a single vote has been counted. We have so many people infringing on democracy. And I would say that Bernie and Tulsi have both been on the receiving end of attacks on democracy. I would say Tulsi a little bit more this election cycle, and obviously Bernie experienced it exclusively in 2016. Now, we know that some of the reason that Tulsi is polling, at least not where she needs to be polling in national polls and things like that, or even lower than some of the candidates that we know are trash. Some of the reason is well, honestly, actually, I don't even know if that's always the case because they will literally leave her names off of polls. They won't include, if a poll has her too high, they make sure that it is not talked about. It's not discussed. They keep her name off the television screen. They keep her out of events. And once again, this is an infringement on democracy. And we know that that has obvious implications on the viability or the potential viability of her campaign or anyone else's. And we know that this, things like this is why Bernie was, quote unquote, not doing well with the black vote in 2016. But it turned out, they just didn't know who he is. And by the time they found out, their states where they had the most influence had already passed. So instead of attacking the infringement of democracy, people are saying they're using the democratic suppression as an excuse to demand a progressive to drop out. They're not mad at the infringement of democracy. They're using it to their advantage. That is what neoliberals do. That is what, quote unquote, good Democrats do. Even if you believe your goals are altruistic, once again, you might be really well intentioned. And I believe a lot of people are. But let's be clear. Don't confuse instant gratification with long-term success. Because, Tulsi drops out and like right now, say if today Tulsi drops out, not a single delegate goes to Bernie from Tulsi Gabbard. And I'm telling you, if you look at the spread of Tulsi supporters, if you're counting on every single Tulsi supporter to go to Bernie, it's not happening. Just like I wouldn't expect every single Bernie supporter to go to Tulsi if Bernie dropped out and endorsed Tulsi. It's not happening. That's not the way people work. But then you put Bernie Sanders on an island by himself with the establishment, where they have delegates to actually give to various candidates. And although Bernie would do well in the majority of the states, to pretend like election integrity is not still an issue would be foolish. They don't have to win every state. They just have to win with the combined pool of establishment candidates in every state. So if Biden gets 15%, 20% here, Klobuchar gets 15%, 20% there, Buttigieg here, Warren there, those add up over time, don't they? And you just put Bernie Sanders on an island where in the first round, they can ensure that he might get 49%. He might even get 50.4%. But they will ensure that if you put him on an island, he will not get 51%, and it will go to the second round for superdelegate voting. And of course, we all know that will lead to an establishment pick, most likely Joe Biden. Once again, oh man, now Bernie doesn't have any competition from progressives in the race, so that must mean he's going to win. No, because when you skip steps in democracy, ladies and gentlemen, when you skip steps in democracy, that's how you get Donald Trump to begin with. Because Bernie, by all accounts, actually won in 2016. But he didn't win. So people's voices were silenced. That led to people feeling disenfranchised, which led to the largest exodus of the Democratic Party in the history of the party, which led to the largest, I think it was the most admissions the Green Party has ever had, but also, unfortunately for the Democrats, it also led to the largest amount of Republican registrations as well, and record fundraising amounts for the Republicans as well. And Trump could bring up cheating Bernie Sanders. Trump was able to bring up WikiLeaks. Trump was able to use all of the Democratic infringements by the Democratic Party against them because they skipped steps in democracy. And that led to Donald Trump. If you think that will yield a different result in 2020, you'd be wrong. Guess what? I always talk about FDR and Henry Wallace. They skipped a step in democracy. Henry Wallace rightfully won that VP spot at the convention, FDR's very last convention. However, FDR himself allowed the convention to be rigged. They pretended like he didn't win. They literally they adjourned after Henry Wallace was approved. They said that he wasn't approved, even though he was. I mean, there's video footage of this. You should look it up. The next day they come back. They elect Truman as VP. They skipped a step in democracy, and literally 2 atomic bombs were dropped. A Cold War was started. This is what happens when you skip steps in democracy. Even if you think it's for the greater good, it will yield devastating results. And the people you think you're helping, you're not actually helping. So I really hope that most of you all consider this. Think about this. Like I said, even if you're well-meaning, even if you're very, very tempted to do so, just don't, man. Don't tell other people. That's an insult to voters. It's an insult to the candidates themselves. And I don't even care. Like I said, it could be Pete Buttigieg. The only like caveat, right, for me is like somebody like Bloomberg. Bloomberg is not even lifting a damn finger. He's literally blowing his money, as you know, in various states, money that nobody else would be able to spend if they decide to enter the race that late. And he's trying to buy democracy. That is inherently undemocratic, because that is not a democracy of the people. It's not decisions being made by people. It's decisions being made by money, which obviously everyone does not have access to. And that is inherently undemocratic. So that's like an exception, right? He's not even campaigning. He's just doing what the hell he wants to do from his living room. But if you're out there and you want to campaign and spend your time doing that, you have every right to. Of course, you got to take everything that comes with it. But you will never hear me demand that another candidate should drop out, especially just for the benefit of my candidate. And quite honestly, you shouldn't be demanding it either. Love to know what your thoughts are about this. Leave a like in the comment below. And of course, more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell if you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Of course, if YouTube is giving you trouble, as it always does, you can download the Rockfin app and follow us there. Also, if you want to continue to help our show grow, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon and donate as little as $1. Really, anything helps. Other than that, always remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.